Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 241 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. Also, welcome to our last stream of 2020. It's making me sad. I don't know how you guys are feeling about it, but the year is wrapping up. I will say this, there is a chance we do one more GameFace before the end of the year, but if the industry keeps going like it is right now, that's not going to happen.
I can't be sad about anything that indicates the further passage of time right now.
Exactly.
There was a fast forward button on reality. I jumped straight to April, okay?
I would too, man. We'd all vaccinated.
Be vaccinated, Cyberpunk would be patched, we'd be getting ready for some new games coming out, like Ratchet would probably be out.
Like next-gen exclusives. Yeah, I'm with you, man. And I think a lot of people feel the same way, although some people are actually going to be able to celebrate the holidays. I hope that's the case for all you guys. I hope you guys can get together with family and you've been around kind of family members through this whole quarantine and you feel safe doing that.
If you're in Australia, then you're doing great.
Or if you're in New Zealand, you're out doing whatever the heck you want right now. They literally declared themselves COVID-free yesterday in New Zealand.
That's how you do it.
That's how great leadership, man. They really had great leadership. So anyway, I just want to kind of lay things out as far as how things are going to work today, because the stream is going to be about the same length as a normal stream from us for GameFace, except GameFace 241 is a really short episode. So we only have like 3 or 4 topics, and one of them is just wrapping up all the fantasy stuff that's been going on. And it was crazy, like getting all the data for this stuff. I was like, wow, we had a lot of fantasy stuff going on this year. Really fun and really exciting. So one of the topics is that. And we're going to talk about the Game Awards, obviously, and a couple other things. And then when that show wraps, we'll dip to black for a couple seconds. And then we'll come right back up for our Game of the Year awards for 2020. We have 24 categories this year. We did cut a couple, but we've also added a couple as well. So really excited for that. But overall, if you're talking about time commitment for our stream today, it's going to be about the same as to what you're used to from our normal streams every week. So first of all, I just want to say happy holidays to all of you guys. Some people may just watch this and not watch our Game of the Year awards. So I want to make sure I say it at the front of both. Happy holidays. I hope you guys all have a safe, most importantly, safe holiday season. I hope you can see your family if it's responsible to do so. And I hope, despite a lot of the financial troubles that a lot of people have been going through this year, I hope you can have a decent Christmas and you get at least 1 or 2 things that you'd really like. And the same goes to you, Matt. Much love to you for everything you've done for Sifted this year. And Jared, as a matter of fact. How you doing, Jared?
Doing good, hanging in there.
Yeah, Jared's actually, I think you are going home for the holidays, right?
Yeah, I'm going, I'm going to go next Monday and just, they said they're okay with me coming, so I'm going to try it out and get tested over and over again.
Yep, so you're doing it the safe way, and that's about the only way to do it if you're living far from home right now. But Jared, thank you for everything you've done this year. I really appreciate it, man. Safe travels and happy holidays to you. Jared doesn't have to do this. He has other gigs at like TV networks and stuff. So the fact that he takes the time out of his schedule to come and be our TD for GameFace means a lot to me. So anyway, with that, let's get on with 241. We have this show, this stream is overwhelming to me. There were 2 days of pre-production put into this stream today. And there are so many moving parts, so many things we're doing. I hope it all works. We're going to give it a go. It's live. We'll see how it works. But hopefully give us a little leeway. I'll say this, doing the Game of the Year awards in this setting is really weird. To me, this will be the stream that will be the most strange not being with Matt while we do the show. But again, we're like everybody else. We're just doing the best we can with this crappy situation that we're all in. And before we get to the fantasy wrap up, I have something very awesome to share with you guys. So as I mentioned earlier, I really do feel for all you guys who are out of work. And some of you guys have said that you've lost your jobs and you've continued to be patrons at Sifted. And so I had a conversation this week with a fellow sifter, Suicide King. And he reached out to me and said that he wanted to buy 10 shirts for sifters for the holidays. And that includes everything, the shirt and the shipping and everything. Now, the caveat here is that there's a couple caveats. The first caveat is that unfortunately it's US only. And I hate to do that, but unfortunately the shipping to Europe is so expensive. And I'm sure you guys have seen that have been buying shirts that live in Europe. And again, thank you so much for that. But I'm sure you've seen the shipping is outrageous. So he's willing to pay for the shipping to U.S. sifters. Now, here's the other caveat. We're trying to help people who are in financial need. So if you've lost your job, you're not making ends meet, you want a shirt, send me a DM on Sifted. Just go into the messages in the dashboard, just go @Shane and send me a message telling me your situation. And we're going to pick the people who get the shirts from the people who need them the most. So 10 shirts, DM me on the site @Shane and just tell me what's going on with your situation. Give me your shirt size and you're going to get a free shirt, courtesy of Sifter Suicide King, who also deserves a lot of thanks for this year. He's really supported us through thick and thin. So anyway, now it's time for us to wrap up all the fantasy madness that we've been doing on Sifted throughout the year. We're going to kick things off with the fantasy challenge. So the fantasy challenge, we had like almost 200 people enter it this year. Last year, I think we had like 60 or something. So we like quadrupled the number of people who participated. And this was the official sort of website driven challenge where you went in and we had an interface. You could pick your games. And that has all wrapped up. And we have finally determined the winner. And the winner was crowned by 2/100ths of a point. And I'll be honest with you, like I waited until yesterday to determine the winner because as reviews kept trickling in for games, like some games that were even released like months ago, like people are still reviewing them and those reviews get added to Metacritic. It may tweak the score a little bit. Those were still changing. And so I just called it yesterday when I started putting together the graphics and everything for this. I was just like, okay, that's it. And at the cutoff, the winner is Polak. Polak beat Vinuraba by 2/100ths of a point. I mean, literally, it was changing, like going back and forth like the last 4 days. It was that close. But we had to call it eventually, and Polak is the winner. Polak also is a sifter. And if you guys remember, if you were a sifter and you won, you're going to get 2 free games. And if you were not a sifter, you're going to get 1 free game. Well, Polak is a sifter. He is a patron. So he will be getting 2 free games from us. Congratulations. Amazing how it all worked out. I will say this, you know, everybody who finished at the top of the chart were people who had all their games. And I do want to toss out an honorable mention to Matt Kyle. Matt, you finished in 5th place.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. That's great, man.
That's what I can get when you're not competing with me.
Well, I did compete. I did enter. But
yeah, but, but I could pick the same games as you.
Right. And so I did compete, and I ended up 25th, but I was the top scorer of anybody who did not have all 10 games. And I had Halo Infinite as my very last pick. Yeah, I just like slid it in there at the last second, and it ended up burning me. But whatever, I didn't even want to win this or even really compete. Yeah, I just wanted everyone to have fun.
Just as a tip for next year, I'm not going to pick Halo Infinite. So you can put that way low in your draft picks if you want. I'm just going to give you a heads up there.
I think that game will probably be safe in our fantasy draft. And again, just so you guys know, Matt and I will be doing our fantasy draft early next year. It will be one of the first streams that we do in 2021. So anyway, congratulations to Polak. It was really freaking close. Thanks to everybody who played. There are a lot of people that are right up against it. I should also mention too that Bonio, who won the challenge last year, ended up in 3rd and just like, again, fractions away from winning. So I think I would have to say at this point, if we're determining like the king of the Sifted Fantasy Challenge, it's got to be Bonio. I mean, He's got it. So it'll be up to us to keep him out of the winner's circle next year. We will be doing this again next year. I had a lot of fun with this. One thing I would say is I wish we had a way to make it more obvious for you guys to go back and keep checking, because I was doing it like I knew how to get to it. I would just go to the article and there was a link to the results there. But I think a lot of you guys just had no idea what was going on. So for next year, we're going to try to get it to a place where you guys can check it more often and kind of see how you're doing. But once again, congrats to Polak. You are the winner. Next up, it's time for Matt and I's real fantasy league that we draft every year. Was this the 5th year or the 6th year, Matt? I can't remember. 6th year, I think.
Well, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the 6th year, but the 5th year I've done it because the first year was Marcus.
It was Marcus. Yep. Okay. So Matt had a bit of a tough year. Usually I end up losing because of for the reason that Matt lost this year. And that's because Matt just did not end up with a full 10 games on his roster. And if you could put
this was a bad year for that.
It was. I mean, it absolutely was. I barely did. I had no leftovers. Because I had Breath of the Wild 2 as my second alternate. So I ended up having to use my alternate and I had no left. So if another game had been delayed out of the year, I'd have been screwed too. But it is time to reveal that I won. The total score ended up being 780 to 693. Again, I had an extra game. And the way that we settle this is the total points. It's not the average. But the average is a good way to kind of see who did better, like with each pick. And I actually won the average this year too by 1 point. So I think this might be my best year of this ever, Matt. I think you're what? Is 3-2 you?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're still up by a season on me. So it was fun to track this all year. Anything that kind of sticks out to you, Matt? I don't even know if you can really see it.
Yeah, I can see it. No, I mean, I think both of us only really had one bad pick in the end.
Yep.
Avengers and Watch Dogs.
Yep. Like picks that you would totally regret. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything else like over 80. Like there's no bad calls there. Just things that slipped out of. And I think Dying Light 2 is still a good pick.
For sure.
If it had existed.
Yeah. Would have done well, I believe. It's upon what I've seen anyway. But we don't know about that now after what's happened.
No, it's just for once I was the one who was too optimistic.
Yeah, and that does rarely happen.
And your dropout is something that we could have never predicted. So.
Yeah. But you had more games over 90 than I did. I mean, Crusader Kings 3, Microsoft Flight Simulator, you got 90s late in your draft. That's very rare, and that's impressive. Just a couple things didn't work out for you. You probably would have beat me again. So it was a good time, and we'll do it next year. Like I said, one of the very first streams that we'll do in the new year will be the new Sifted Video Game Fantasy League draft. So look forward to that. I
cannot believe Sports Story did not come out.
Yeah.
Like Nintendo teased that like a year and a half ago.
I know. Yep. So anyway, one final update now, and this isn't going to be quite as long, is the Sifted Fantasy Football League that we've been doing on ESPN. I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I totally ruined the league, and I did. I completely ruined our fantasy football league, and I apologize again. What happened, I'll be honest with you, was I just really didn't even think the season was going to happen. And if the NFL had actually followed the protocols that it laid out before the season started, it wouldn't have finished. They've changed and bent the rules as the season has gone on to make sure the season will finish. So I'll be honest, I was a little checked out. Like once I got it set up, I didn't go back and double check the schedule like I usually do, and it ended up ruining the season. I ended up being the 4th highest scorer in the league, despite losing Christian McCaffrey, who's the number 1 player in fantasy football, and Chris Carson, my second pick, for pretty much McCaffrey the whole season. Carson's played like half the games. I still finished 4th overall in scoring, and I was eliminated from the playoffs like 4 weeks ago. And that's because we were supposed to be playing each other in our division, and that keeps one team from getting too many wins because you're playing each other. Somebody has to lose. We were playing across conferences like all season. So 3 teams in my conference went to 7 wins like that, and there was no catching them. So my season was over like weeks and weeks ago. But everybody else is still playing. We had the first round of the playoffs this week. Mitch, as you guys all know, he played Suicide King. And unfortunately, it sucks that he lost because Mitch did win because Suicide King's doing something great for you guys. But Mitch did win, and he is playing against COVID-19 delay to win that conference. And then in the other conference, the one that I was in, Pervesti beat Matt Kyle Rocks, who was our returning champ. So he won't go back-to-back, unfortunately, but congratulations. He also passed the trophy along, or got the trophy, which had been like missing for like 2 years, I think, and it finally just was recovered and he got it, which is great. So anyway, in that one, it'll be Peter Vesti playing against Fantasy Football Team.
Washington inspired.
Yep. It's a good name. And then the winners of those 2 games will play for the championship, all the beans. So good luck to everybody who's still left. I I'm sorry I screwed it up. I've never done anything like this. I've been playing fantasy football since 1995, and I've never made a mistake like this. And the crazy part is I think it actually ended up burning me worse than anybody else. And the people who are in the playoffs don't care, but the people who didn't make the playoffs, I probably screwed you too, and I'm really, really sorry about it. So I'll be on point next year. I think when we go to do the draft, I'll assume the season's actually going to happen, and I'll be a little bit more on it. So anyway, there you go.
Should also note that Tiny2K just gave out 50 subs.
What? Actually, let me go back here before we get into like the first real topic of the show and thank people. Swanland, thank you for Twitch Prime. Commander Fett, thank you for Twitch Prime. Andy T. Monahan, thank you for Twitch Prime. Not Cirque, thank you for Twitch Prime. 3 Hugo, thank you for Twitch Prime. Aussie Brit 2000, thank you. Thank you, everybody. This is awesome. JM Rain making it rain in here. Amazing. Awesome. Thank you, guys. This is our last stream, so if you want to help us out, this is definitely the time to do it. I've had people reaching out to us about just giving us donations. Sifted.net/donate. There was an issue with that interface over the last couple of days. It has just been fixed. It is all good to go. We've been working on it all morning, and it is good to go. We just ran like 3 sales through it to test it. It's all good. So sifted.net/donate. If you just want to kick us some cash, or if you just want to like buy us a beer or a coffee or whatever as a way of thanks, particularly if you're someone who just watches the stream and you're not a patron or whatever, or you're watching on YouTube, sifted.net/donate. And we don't lose like a huge cut from Patreon if you use that interface. We appreciate every dollar. If you just want to donate $1, that's awesome. Thank you very much. So anyway, let's get on with the show proper. We're going to kick things off, as you might expect, with the Game Awards 2020. First, I'm just going to say, Matt, so basically how we're going to structure this, we'll talk about the show in general, and then we'll go through all the reveals. And I'll just say this. I did not get to watch the show live. I was neck deep in cutting GameFace 240, which literally took forever because it was like 3.5 hours long. You know, Matt, we talked about Cyberpunk 2077 for an hour and a half.
Wow.
I know.
I mean, we waited for 8 years. So
I know.
Fair.
I'll say this. I would like to see a more in-depth discussion of that game online because we've really dug into it. And we're going to actually dig into it again here at the end of 241 as our final thoughts. But anyway, because of that, I could not watch the Game Awards live. And so they were on kind of in the background. I could hear them. And when I would hear like a big premiere, I would go watch it, but then I go back to like working on GameFace. So I had to watch the show after the fact, after I knew what the reveals were, and it was torture. Now, I'll say this, Jeff did absolutely the best that he could have done. Like the green screen stuff that they did and the graphics that they had looked great. Like if you don't work in production, you probably wouldn't even have known that that was what they were doing. That's how good it looked. So kudos to him. And like he even had musical performances still, even though, you know, everyone's quarantined and socially distancing. He had musical acts.
That right there, that's my favorite moment of the night when No Man's Sky won and Sean Murray was totally so not ready for it. He was in the middle of drinking. Yeah. And then he had to give like a drunk impromptu acceptance speech. Everyone thought that was going to Fortnite. I thought that was going to Fortnite. Best ongoing.
He's assuming Fortnite's going to win that category every year.
Yeah, but I think No Man's Sky should have. I think
people are just sick of giving Fortnite stuff.
That too. But there has been nothing compares to No Man's Sky's support, and so like that was my favorite moment of the night right there. We just saw there where he's like literally like,
yep, right, give me one.
And then like people called him out on that on Twitter, and he's like, yep,
I was drunk.
Definitely drunk. Did not expect to have to talk to anybody that night.
Yeah, so there were some moments like that, but like all the acceptances were through Zoom, and sometimes for the most part, the production was good.
The upside of that was that like I think he got a lot of people that normally would not have made the trip to the physical awards. So like it was kind of more celebrity studded than normal because all they had to do was get on Zoom, you know?
Well, Gal Gadot. Yeah. That's all I need to know.
Gal Gadot.
I've heard people pronounce her name like so many different ways.
I've heard her pronounce her name. It's Gal Gadot.
Gadot? Is that how she says it?
The T is not silent. The T is there.
Anything she's in, I'm good.
Well, we got Wonder Woman coming up.
I know.
Early reviews are really good.
But you're right, Matt. Like the celebrity level was higher this year. Just her alone, probably the biggest celebrity that's ever been on the show. Would you agree with that?
Of the Game Awards, yes, probably not if you include like the Spike era. But
yeah, the VGAs were just overrun with celebrities. I mean, it just literally all the A-listers would go.
She's up there. Christopher Nolan's up there.
Yep.
They had a lot. So yeah, no complaints on the talent quality of the presenters. That was definitely the best he's ever done on that.
But even with Gal Gadot, they did this weird thing with her. Like at first she was just on Zoom and she looked great. But then like when she was reading the nominees, they cut to this green screen shot of her in the bottom, like all like kind of washed out. You couldn't even see. You got her, man. Like she's full frame the whole time, man. You don't take her off full frame.
I mean, they want to show the nominees, but like,
I understand, but you find some other kind of graphical way to do that with her, so you can see her anyway. But you're right. Like it was, as far as stars are concerned, and especially considering how they had to produce the thing, top notch. We'll get to the debuts and kind of talk about that stuff, but I think this show really suffered from the lack of a live element. Now I do, you do realize like the conversations he's having with them as they accept are technically like live. They're recorded while they're actually having that conversation for the first time. But you're not getting like the audience reactions. You're not getting the people, how people walk down the aisle after they win tells a story. And then once they get up there, how they act and how they are with their teams and all of that stuff. I missed all of it. You miss like kind of the things that just happen off the cuff. Like I'm not a big fan of the Joseph Fares Oscars profanity rant. But that stuff happens during live shows and it generally doesn't happen during stuff like this. So I think Jeff did a great job with what he had. But still, to me,
it's not like he chose not to have those things.
Yeah, I know. It's not his fault at all. In fact, it's to his credit how good the show actually was. But to me, it was the worst of the Game Awards, and I found it really boring.
I mean, my actual question for him is the shoes. I don't know what was going on.
Well, that's the thing now, Matt. People wearing suits with like goofy shoes.
Yeah, but those shoes.
I know.
I don't know.
What did you think of the show in general, Matt? Again, as someone who comes from production, I really respect your opinion on stuff.
I mean, I thought I agree with you that it was the best it could be given the circumstances. It definitely took into account the lessons learned of doing virtual award shows for other award shows over the course of the year. You could tell that he was keeping an eye very closely on how other people were doing it, taking the stuff that worked and coming up with other ideas for things that didn't work. Mm-hmm. I think people, I know the Oscars say they're going to be in person in April. Good luck.
No way.
I would if I were planning an award show, I would definitely want to look at this one for guidance.
You're right, though. That's a good point, Matt. He really did kind of blaze a trail because all these other award shows have canceled. They haven't done them. Well, that deserves applause. That's a big deal.
For sure.
That's a big deal. I didn't even realize that. You make a really good point.
Like, that's what I thought of most of the time. I mean, you're right. Like, I wasn't interested in the stuff between the reveals for the most part. I also still have the same criticism I had last year. If you want me to take this seriously as an award show, you can't just stand there and list off 4 awards in a row with nothing and call it a day. Like, you can't just say, best RPG is this, best of is this, best of this. Okay, let's get back to the trailers. It's like, okay, well, I know this is a marketing stunt disguised as an award show, but if
somebody on Sifted called it that, a 3-hour like advertisement parading.
That's what it is. That's literally what it is.
Show. And it's not, and it is because all those things are paid.
Yeah.
And I know why Jeff had to do it, because this is what he does. You can't afford to go a year without doing this.
Absolutely.
That's your thing.
But I'm saying, like, if you're already going to be 3 hours, just do every award.
Yeah.
Just make it 4. Who cares?
There was a lot of filler in this show. I do think that understand why
the musical stuff was kind of stop things dead most of the time. I do at least Eddie Vedder playing if I ever were to lose you is at least tied to the game, but I actually like Joel's version in the game better.
It was awful, dude.
And then
I love Pearl Jam. I used to have Pearl Jam T-shirts in the 90s and all that, but I thought that performance was awful.
Yeah, I mean, look,
you're talking about
if he'd been up there on stage doing it, like in real life and in person, that would have been different. I think part of it was just like the setup you had to use for pandemic times.
Like, I just watched an interview last night with Peter Hook. He is the bass player for Joy Division and New Order, and he has been trying to make stuff happen online. He said it's just been a miserable failure. Like they'll do like a live show and try to charge like $5, and he said they would get like 100 people. So is live music does not work through a webcam. It just doesn't. The big part of it, again, with the show in general, it's the experience of being there and having the cameras showing people there with other people and seeing the dynamics of the people's attitudes and bouncing off of each other. That's a big part of it.
It's just not an option this year. So.
Yeah. And the show was too long. 3 hours is too long.
And like you didn't need
2 hours max. Like it really.
Like I appreciate you have the London Symphony Orchestra or whatever, but like or Philharmonic, and they're like, hey, here we go with some music. It's like really like an orchestra playing Mario's theme. Never heard that one before. Like it's like you got to have a reason to do everything in a show this long, and I feel like the musical stuff was not justified very well.
Yeah, I agree. And Eddie Vedder thing just literally ground the show to a halt.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's not like just random bands, like, back when it was just like, okay, Imagine Dragons is here because Jeff wants to meet Imagine Dragons at the after party. That was pretty much what I think would happen there. But like this, at least, Eddie Vedder's song is in The Last of Us 2. Like, so I get it.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But certainly in a real world scenario, I would have preferred if you got, Troy Baker and Laura Bailey to come up and play it.
Yep.
Was that Laura Bailey? Laura Bailey was Abby. Ashley Johnson is Ellie.
Yep. Right.
Get Troy and Ashley to come up there and play it together. Like that would be great.
That would have been amazing. Yeah.
That's I bet they would have.
They probably would have. That's a better idea.
Troy Baker will play anything you ask him to.
But you also have to realize, and this was something that plagued the Spike VGAs, and why a lot of people didn't like it, is the drive to get celebrities involved. Because, and it's funny that Jeff is kind of transitioning back to that, because he was a part of the VGAs all along, and he and I were the ones who would go into the meetings and be like, it's not about the celebrities, it's about the games. And until you guys refuse to get that, this award show's never going to explode. And every year it was just, here's all the same people that we have at the Guys' Choice Awards and the Scream Awards and all the other award shows that Spike did. They just sent it out to that same list, and that same group of people showed up. And hey, they did get like straight up A-listers every year, but gamers don't give a crap. So,
when also like mainline people don't like, because I had some friends who were much more casual watch it this year for the first time, because they had nothing else to do. Yeah.
I think we're all running out of stuff to do at this point.
And I'll tell you, and I don't mean any disrespect to Jeff on this, but one of the top questions I got from my casual friends was, who is this guy and why is he hosting? Like
they think a celebrity should host an award show?
Not that a celebrity, but they can tell he's not really a professional host. I think
he does a good job, though.
He does a good job for kind of our industry, but I think there's a ceiling to that if you want to kind of
he's not going to ad-lib jokes and stuff. Right. You're right. I mean, if you look at other award shows and you get like, some great comedian to come on and host it, they're going to be funny. They're going to make up jokes on the fly. They're going to go off script. They're going
to make it sparkle a little bit. And you could have gotten a lot more mileage with a host like that out of the Swedish Chef sequence.
That's true.
That's
a good point.
Jeff's not an actor. Like that's all there's to it. He's not a comedian. Like it's not a criticism.
He's good. Very good at what he does. And you see it in the show.
What he does is he puts stuff like this show together. Yeah. Like that's his main skill.
That's what he excels
that he does. Like that's his thing he's best at.
Yeah.
Whatever you think of him up there hosting, like you can't take that away from him, because he's up there because he made all this.
I do wonder though,
if I were in charge of this in his position, I would start looking at someone who could be more of a personality to be the face of this thing.
Because Spike did that. They would like at first they just didn't care. They're like, any big celebrity we can get to host the VJs, will do it. But after
that, I don't agree with. Like
but after a while, they did start listening to Jeff and I, and they started trying to find celebrities that at least made a little more sense, like Jack Black. But that stuff doesn't move the needle either, because the casuals just are not going to watch a video game award show. They're just
also Jack Black is also not a host.
I know.
He's an actor.
He was funny and outrageous.
He was funny, but there's I mean, look, there's a reason the Oscars have struggled since Johnny Carson retired to find someone to host that show, because it's a very difficult job.
It is. Yeah.
No one has pulled that off, and actually the Oscars at this point are probably not going to have a host anymore. Like last year's no host version worked great. It was great.
It's really good. And maybe Jeff will start looking at that stuff. I'm sure another part of it may be budget. And look, Jeff, maybe he's not making much money this year. And
I think Jeff hosting is better in a lot of ways than the way the Oscars have floundered in previous years, because at least Jeff's consistent.
I'll say this, Matt. I would rather have Jeff than just some pretty girl.
Right. Like some, like Joel McHale being snide the whole time or something like that. Jeff is better than that. Like
the person has to respect the medium. Yeah. That's baseline. That's where you. And
I think you're going to be able to start finding celebrities or host people who can do that. Like I bet Trevor Noah would handle that fine.
Well, you got to realize some of these celebs are, they grew up with games and now they're 25 or whatever.
Yeah, or like Henry Cavill. If you could afford him, would be, the man has played, whatever, however hundreds of hours of Witcher 3 or whatever. We tried Vin Diesel last year. Vin Diesel's legit. Like, did you see why he's in that ARC thing?
No, we'll talk about it when we get to it, though.
There's a reason for that, and it's actually pretty cool, even if that trailer was not.
So anyway, that's kind of our rough take on the Game Awards. Kudos to Jeff for pulling it off. Mm-hmm. Nobody else did.
No.
All these award shows have been canceled. Jeff Keighley had his award show. That's impressive.
Well, and even the ones that weren't canceled, I don't think came off as well as this one did. I've seen several virtual award shows this year. And I think this one did, but this one and what was the other good one?
The medium lends itself to it too.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't an award show, but the other one I thought was good was what was there was another good virtual presentation this year. I think maybe it was the DC showcase they did with virtual set and stuff. I think they might have taken some.
Oh no, I saw that. That was kind of goofy.
It was goofy, but was there some around that time? Maybe it was around the same time. There was now. I guess it didn't stand out that well because I don't remember what it was. So very good.
Touche.
But I think of the we are stuck in a pandemic and we're going to have to do a virtual event thing. I think this is the best one I've seen this year.
Yep. Erebus Jones, thank you for Twitch Prime, man. Emperor Dread, thank you for Twitch Prime. Majora Tom 91, thank you for Twitch Prime. They just keep rolling in. This is awesome. Tiny 2K, thank you for Twitch Prime. Awesome. Oh my gosh, Tiny 2K just giving away these. This is awesome, you guys. Secret of Man, thank you. And I realize we haven't been live for a couple weeks, so you guys were all loaded and ready for Bear because none of you guys had subscribed. The Surly Mexican, thank you. Just incredible. Thank you, guys. All right, let's get to the debuts because let's be honest, Matt, that's why everybody watches the Game Awards. Yeah. The other stuff is nice. Sure, I want to see a musical performance for a game that I really liked. And I want to see the people who made the games that I really liked. But why I really tune in is to see the world premieres and the debuts.
See what dumb choices they made for the winners of things.
And that's tangential. I can get a list of that later on for most of the awards and survive. But
I don't disagree with most of the winners on this one actually. And periodically, it's nice to be reminded how old I am when they give awards out to people I've never heard of for the influencers or content creators, whatever that means.
Well, we'll get to our Game of the Year awards, but one thing I will say before we do it is that this was one of the easier years to pick winners.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't have to toil over my picks a lot this year. There's
there were a couple in there where I'm like, best RPG. Look, I don't think Final Fantasy VII should won it, but you look at that category and I'm like, I don't really have an alternate for you. And when you look at the 5 nominees on the Game Awards RPG category, I'm like, that's about it for this year, isn't it? That's it, in terms of stuff that wasn't completely bonkers.
Yep.
There were some dry categories this year. If you're a fighting game fan, you were doing nothing this year except maybe playing Mortal Kombat Aftermath.
Spoiler: we eliminated fighting games from our Game of the Year this year.
Yeah, it was hard. It was. There were a lot of games with good support, like Tekken and Soul Calibur and Mortal Kombat all got great support, but nothing new came out.
Yep. All right, let's get to the debuts because there are a lot. And also, I have cut a bunch. So there was a lot. I think I have 15 here that I actually thought were worth discussing, which is pretty impressive.
No shortage of new stuff and review. It delivered on that. It was the majority of the 3 hours was stuff you'd never seen before.
Yeah, even the commercials were exclusives for indie.
Yeah,
stuff.
There were no commercials for Fusion razors here. Yeah. There's no. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it was commercial.
All stuff I was interested in.
It's all paid or whatever. I mean, the show's paid, but
as long as the stuff that's paid is stuff I care about,
that I want to see,
that's fine. Yeah.
Works for me. Yep. So first up, we're going to talk about. I'm calling it Mass Effect 4. We don't know whether it's going to be called Mass Effect 4. Right now, it's just called New Mass Effect by EA. They showed the first trailer for the new Mass Effect. Matt, I was pretty shocked by this. Were you?
I mean, I knew what it was as soon as it started, but I didn't expect them to mention it. Really,
no way. I never dreamed that they would. And
I like that this entire trailer's entire like focus is like, we are back in the Milky Way galaxy. Everyone, just relax.
Milky Way. Bye.
Although I will say the thing at the end that says Mass Effect will continue reads to me a little bit like a threat.
Well, I think that they hint that they also kind of hint that I think it's going to take place in the Milky Way and Andromeda. There's like a little subtlety I thought in there that kind of nudged me that direction. But anyway, most importantly, it appears to be mostly set in the Milky Way, the setting for the first 3 games. It also appears to, at least the trailer, pick up right at the end of Mass Effect 3. And that is why we've labeled it for the time being on the site as Mass Effect 4. But they could give it a subtitle. Or
it also seems to canonize the Destroy ending.
Yep.
Which previously Synthesis was supposed to be the canon ending. But Destroy is A, the one that destroys all the relays, and B, is the one that shows that Shepard may not be dead.
Yep. And surprise, surprise, they picked the one where the star may still be alive.
And here's what looks like Liara maybe
that's
looking
smart,
for
I think.
him.
I mean, I think
bring the characters we care about back. Like that. Look, I've said it over and over again. Mass Effect is the story of Shepard.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not going to tell a story about Shepard,
I mean, it's you.
If you're not going to tell a story about that character, what are you even doing?
Yeah.
Now, look, you've heard it many times if you watch this show. I think Mass Effect should have stopped after 3. Like, you don't need to make everything into an endless franchise. But if you are going to force a continuation, you might as well go with what's been working and not try to start over and throw out half the world you've built by not having all those alien races around like in Andromeda.
I mean, it's better than Andromeda too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I look forward to playing this in 2023 or whatever it is.
That was what I was going to finish it with was like, and really the bittersweet part of it is, I was pleasantly surprised that they showed the new Mass Effect, but in actuality, like,
this is a long way out, and like
so long. Like,
we will probably not hear anything more about this game until the next Game Awards. Like, if we're honest, that's what happened with Dragon Age.
So we'll see. Next up. Not really a surprise at all if you've been watching GameFace all year. I think I've said that this was coming 3 times in the show. Perfect Dark for PC and Xbox Series platforms. We kind of discussed this a couple months ago, I think, Matt, when the rumors were kind of making the rounds.
Yeah, and certainly in the run-up to the Xbox Series X reveal presentation, I think you thought this might be in the mix.
Yep. But instead, we get it like a month later. So
the initiative working on Perfect Dark has been like one of the worst.
It's been one of those things that it's also been one of those things that people in the industry have been talking about for a while. Like just being kind of around people in the industry, you hear some stuff, but not really that much. People are really good about expecting their friends.
But this has been like there's been smoke here for this fire for a long time. Like they've been working on this for a while, I think.
Yep. And here's one thing I would say:
that doesn't mean it's coming soon, but.
Here's one thing I would say that I think already it's getting right, that like Perfect Dark Zero totally botched, is that Joanna is a spy. To me, Perfect Dark Zero is just like another flashy launch shooter.
Yeah.
It wasn't really Perfect Dark to me. This game looks like it's actually looking at first Perfect Dark and saying, okay, what really was special about this game? And they're kind of diving into that part of it and then extrapolating it out into this game. No in-engine footage, really. It's really just a teaser trailer. And I don't think we're going to get this game either, probably until 2021, Q4 2021 is my guess from what I've been hearing.
Yeah, and Perfect Dark Zero, it felt more like they went to Rare and they're like, oh, can you just make it like Halo?
Yeah.
So
it was also like a Rare Scab team. It wasn't really the Perfect Dark team that worked on it. So
yeah. I mean, look, I don't have any real affection for Perfect Dark as a franchise. Like, I didn't like the original game very much.
Well, remember, Matt, we talked about this in that conversation. And when we published that episode on YouTube, we got heat.
Yep.
I was like, dang, I can't believe there are this many people our age who even played Perfect Dark that could be that angry about it.
Yeah, well, people love their Nintendo.
I guess.
Just didn't. That game ran like crap. And it just I could not get into it the way
even
I did
with the expansion pack.
Yeah,
it still ran awful.
Credit to Nintendo and their people. The tail end of the N64, they were pushing that system beyond its limits.
Yeah.
So
they went too far though.
Yeah, that
made their games
Perfect Dark. And didn't quite get there. But I'm up for a reinvention whenever they manage to get it to us. We'll see.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm open to this. I'm not that excited for it.
Yeah, same.
I've never been a fan of Joanna Dark as a character. Like, she just hasn't. That's the thing. She doesn't have any character. She's been very dry and kind of acerbic.
She's like if you ordered Black Widow from Wish.
Yeah.
She's like, I guess. I mean, this is kind of the same thing, I guess. But all right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's big. I mean, let's be honest. Like, we're seeing all this stuff coming for Xbox platforms. That is a huge paradigm shift from what we've been dealing with for the last 8 years. So I'm not gonna be down on it. I'm just saying, in the pantheon of stuff I've seen in the last couple months, as far as getting excited for it, Perfect Dark is not at the top of the list.
No, you're not going to move the console war needle with this one.
No, this is something that you release to keep your fans happy. Not every exclusive has to be to bring new people in. You just need to keep the people who have your console happy and playing your console at times.
Or just content at this point. Anything.
Yep. Next up, another 4, at least we're calling it 4, although I think they may have solidified this title, Dragon Age. We've been calling it 4 because it is the 4th Dragon Age, but it appears that they may just be calling it Dragon Age.
That's certainly what the logo says. It's they kind of debuted a new font logo for it. I don't know. It would be weird to just call it Dragon Age, but it might be kind of the move they're thinking, where it's like you can't really have depended on the mass audience to have played the last 3 of these things. And only one of the 3 Dragon Ages has a number on it.
Right.
The other, and none of them were called Dragon Age. Like Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Inquisition. And it's not really a particularly linear story. It's not like Mass Effect, where it's the same character through the whole story. You play a different person in every one. So if you want to kind of start over, that's fine. I like the look of it. There's this weird sort of mystical cyberpunk thing they got in that city is really cool. This is supposedly all in-engine.
So at the beginning of the trailer, it says not in-engine. But then what they show at the beginning is this CG art stuff. And then
like the trailer from last year.
Yeah. I mean, I do think what they're showing is in-engine, though. Yeah. Eventually, when they
characters they're showing, I think, are in-engine.
Right. Yeah. So there's some stuff that you're seeing there that is actually going to be in the game. But otherwise, it was this really rough story synopsis you're seeing it now.
Basically they're confirming that, because in 2 and in Inquisition, you played a special person. You played the hero of whatever wall, where the name of that city was. Bright Wall or whatever, and then in Inquisition you played the Inquisitor. So this seems to be confirming that the character you play is not special, like in Origins, who was just kind of a Grey Warden who happened to be in the center of all this stuff. But the special person is the villain, as in the first game. The special person was the whatever the dragon guy, the bad. There was a name for him, but I don't care about that game, so I don't remember what they called him. But you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So in this, the Dread Wolf is the big bad in this, Big Bad Wolf, and so presumably he's the special one in this, and you're fighting against him or her. Who knows? Otherwise we have almost no more information that we had from the last teaser, which was the previous Game Awards. So it feels like we're still pretty far away on this game, especially if they keep losing leads. But it's nice to see Solus again.
We should have seen more of this game, Matt.
It's a little. We
should have seen a lot more of this game.
I've been saying this game's 2-3 years away anyway, but already. But
we should have seen straight up gameplay.
Well, if it wasn't
or at
2 or
least
3
a
years
gameplay
away,
trailer, like an edited gameplay trailer.
I think if this game makes it in 2022, we'll be lucky.
Which is another reason why I'm like Mass Effect 4.
Mass Effect way out. Yeah.
God knows when that's coming out. Like
Mass Effect 4 might get here by the end of the gen. We might be playing that alongside Elder Scrolls 6.
You may be right. They may come right around the same time, which would be amazing. An amazing way to finish Gen 9, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Next up, Smash Brothers reveal. We knew that Smash Brothers was getting a new character at the Game Awards. This didn't leak at all. Nobody really had any idea it was Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII.
Although I admit, in this trailer, I know you didn't get to see it live, but I did, because I just had to go to the other room. When the boss, the Smash Brothers boss here, whose name I don't remember, gets cut in half. For a second, I thought you were right, and it was Ryu Hayabusa from the right end, because it was swords. It gets cut in half I'm like, katana, it's a sword. It's Ryu, and it's no, it's the least interesting character imaginable. Hey,
I think people love it though. I think most people are.
The fans
really
love it.
I just
I don't know. I can't remember a time when my interest has gone from to zero like faster than this reveal. Not that I was gonna play Smash Brothers.
I mean, I haven't played Smash since. No, that's not true. I played it at launch a good bit, and then I had to play it again like a year later just to capture footage. So we had footage in our database, and that's it. So I'm not a big Smash player. This does really nothing for me, but
no.
The Smash players, the dedicated fans, love it. So to me, win. If the people who really love the game are really into it, at this point, that's really all that matters, Matt. Like, we don't matter anymore to the Smash universe until the next game comes out.
No, there's in no world should they cater to me in this game at all. I'm irrelevant to that.
So I think it was a smart call because
it's just a mix of
flipping out over it.
It's just a mix of game I don't play anymore plus character I don't care about from game I don't like. So it's just like, I mean,
triple whammy.
Yeah, but you can't argue with that music. Music's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and it looks good. Like it seems like they handled it pretty well.
Yeah, I'm always impressed by I always like, even if I don't play it, I always like to see
how like the
effort in the animation they put into. Yeah,
was insane.
Just like the creative work that goes into making these characters look like and like how often you get to see Mario almost impaled on a sword. I mean, they cheated, but
that's still that they went around the internet of Mario impaled on the samurai sword. I'm sure Nintendo isn't too happy about that one. Next
Nintendo made it, right?
Well, didn't they doctor it though to have Mario actually being stabbed, or was that in the trailer?
It's in the trailer. Like the silhouette is.
Oh wow!
And then it zooms in, and you see he's got him by hanging him by his overalls.
Oh, I thought it was.
But the wide shot, the wide shot with the silhouette is you're supposed to think he's been stabbed.
Oh, it's a gag.
And you're like, what are they doing? It's a joke.
Oh, okay.
It was a good trailer. I just don't care about Sephiroth. So.
Yep. Next up, Back 4 Blood, the unofficial spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead. It is being created by a pretty big bulk of the Left 4 Dead team. So it is pretty much the original squad. The other thing about this is that they debuted it, showed a trailer, which was really good, and then released a big chunk of gameplay, and it's actually coming out in like a week. That's how you do it right there. And it looks really good. For those of you who don't know Left 4 Dead, and it's crazy that I have to even give this synopsis, but it was like the first kind of cooperative, team-based, point-to-point shooter. And it's been copied mercilessly over and over. And I think that it was kind of one of the progenitors of what would then become the asymmetrical multiplayer game. I think a lot of people played Left 4 Dead and looked at that and was like, what if we tweak this and did this and put one player on the other side or whatever? So I think it ended up being a pretty influential game. Now, if they can do something innovative in 2020, I think will be the question. I don't feel like I really saw that in the trailer or the gameplay, but I think for most people, Matt, just more Left 4 Dead will probably be good enough.
Yeah, that's probably enough. And I mean, I'm not super interested in this because I don't play a lot of co-op online stuff anymore. But it definitely you could tell what it was. You could tell the pedigree. You could see that it was on par with what they've done in the past and with a lot of the modern tech. And the funny thing, so there's a game that followed this. I can't remember what it was called, but there was a game that came. The game they showed after this began with an S or something. But it was a very similar thing. It was like a co-op versus organic monster zombie-ish sort of things, but it was much lower budget and much not an indie necessarily, but low, not on the. And there was a moment where I was like, okay, so I did kind of feel like, okay, Back 4 Blood, cool. And then he showed me this right after it. First off, I feel sorry for those guys for having to follow Back 4 Blood because they're so similar.
Yeah.
But to me, I was like, oh yeah, Back 4 Blood's budget and the talent and the pedigree behind it really do make the difference. The presentation makes a difference.
It worked well for Back 4 Blood, though, didn't it? To see the dichotomy there, to see the same game or a game in the same genre done not as well. Yeah, it certainly shines a light on it.
So my opinion kind of
the game you're talking about is Scavengers.
Scavengers, that's right.
Thanks, Vincent, for that. Yep. And you're right. It made Back 4 Blood look really good, and it made Scavengers look really, really bad.
Yeah, it was kind of not very nice to put Scavengers right up against Back 4 Blood that way.
Yep. But it is coming soon, which is cool. At this point, I'm looking at what's going on for the rest of the year. There aren't a lot of games coming out. I'm pretty much finished with Cyberpunk at this point until they patch it anyway, and I want to dive back into the world. I'm going to need something to play. It's going to fit the bill nicely. I'm all in on it. So it was smart to make sure they were in there the week before their launch. There wasn't much of that this year in the show in general where, hey, here's this thing that's live now. It seemed like we got a lot more of that last year. But here was one of them, even though it's a week delayed. And I think it's going to be pretty good. So good stuff there. Next up, It Takes Two and Joseph Fares. We've talked about Joseph on the show. For those of you who don't know, he was the guy who said F the Oscars on the Game Awards a couple years ago. That shtick has since worn thin. However, he was pretty good in the show. And the best part about it to me was Jeff's intro. Did you see how Jeff introduced him?
I did. I don't remember.
He says something like, and he's really crazy. And he goes, and he's actually my friend. And he goes, I'm not kidding. Like, it's like it suddenly dawned on him that he wasn't just like someone else in the industry anymore. They were actually like bros, and it happened live. And he had that like epiphany moment right there. And he's like, and he looks at the camera and goes, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm actually friends with Joseph Fares. So I thought that was really cool. And that added like kind of an extra kind of tone to the show. And then he showed his game, and it looks really cool, Matt. Like, It's like this crazy cooperative shooter-ishy thing. That's like a husband and wife team that are like made out of wood. The art style, I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, they've been cursed and turned into like dolls. Basically.
Yeah, and the whole thing is they're working together to break the curse. Mm-hmm. But the coolest thing really about it is you can play this game cooperatively if you're the only person who has the game. So if you buy it and then you want to play with somebody, the other person can play it with you even if they don't have it. And I thought that was really cool. And he wasn't obnoxious this time. He was just kind of a good dude. So I thought the game showed well. I thought he was better than he has been the last couple of years. And I thought it was a lighthearted moment where you kind of got to see a peek inside Jeff's heart for a second. So I thought it was good. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by this game. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was physically repulsed by what the No Way Out or whatever that was.
Yeah.
I
hated the art style in that game. And
yeah, this looks really good.
I don't love the art style unless when it's pushed back, it looks amazing. Mm-hmm. When the close-ups on the characters, though, I don't know.
I actually do like I like the way she's made, like the way she's kind of made out of yarn. Like I think that there's a really cool texture.
The game's really creative.
Yeah, has sort of a Sackboy / Unraveled sort of look to it in places. Mm-hmm. And like I don't know if it's as funny as it thinks it is, like with the book doing all the shtick. But I like the premise, and it's an interesting idea. It's also interesting that like there is sort of a trend of miniature things having to fight normal sized things that are gigantic because they're small. Stuff with this and Grounded and that kind of thing.
Vincent also brings up in the chat that, and I should have mentioned this, you have to play this co-op. It's just like A Way Out. You can't play it by yourself at all.
Mm. Which means I will probably not play. But like,
and honestly, Matt, I think that's going to exclude a lot of people. Let's just be honest. I don't know if that was a smart move, but that's the way he makes his games. Like, he wants people to cooperate. And I like that. I like that that's kind of the aesthetic that he's settled on and the agenda that he wants to push with his game. So
yeah, and it's like important to find a thing you're good at and a thing that you believe in and a niche that you can be the best in if you can. And that seems to be what he's doing. He's not like just sitting back and making the same game over and over again. Yep. So he does seem to be advancing the ideas behind them every time he makes a new one. So like, you can't fault that, even if I'm not super into the things.
Yep.
He seems to be doing it right from what I can see.
Yep. So like I said, pleasant surprise. It looked better than I thought it was going to. Next up, the Callisto Protocol. This game, it's made by a bunch of Dead Space guys. And it looks like Dead Space, and it looks like it plays like Dead Space. And everyone was really excited about that.
Yep.
And then a couple of days later, it's discovered that this game is actually set in the PUBG universe. And we should have known this.
Well, because the company that's making it, which is founded by the guy who created Dead Space, was bought by PlayerUnknown. Yeah. And so everything PlayerUnknown makes is in the PUBG universe.
Yeah, so Striking Distance Studios, which was started by Glenn Schofield, he actually said like a month ago that his studio's first game was going to be a PUBG, like a narrative-driven PUBG game.
Yep.
And then they announced this game,
and everyone was like, "Oh God, no! Like we don't want."
Nobody knew. Like everyone had just forgotten that he had said that. They're like, "Oh my God, they're making a new Dead Space," but it's just.
But when they said that, he was like, "Oh, we're doing a narrative," and everyone was like, "Oh, PUBG? No, I'm out." Like, I saw tons of people just dismiss it because of that. Because when you think of that, you think it's going to be like some kind of weird military
thing. Whatever. Yeah. Nope.
Not this. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they tie this to PUBG, but
I don't know. I mean, it's 2070 or something. So, I'm sure. Like, does it matter? Not really.
I really don't care. As long as I'm getting a new Dead Space.
You can see there's tons of like things, and there's like an Isaac Clarke reference, like where he's like IC was there, is like carved into the prison cell, and like he's.
I wonder how much of that they can get away with.
He's reading an engineering book, that kind of thing. The other thing, if you look at the monitors, when they pulls out and the guy's looking at the monitors, like there's the initials of the various the various monitors. I think they're all the initials of Dead Space characters.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot in there.
They've all been in prison.
So they're going to veer as close to being a Dead Space game as they can without getting sued, I think is the goal here.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But I think it looks good. Graphically, looks a little rough, I think.
I mean, this is a CG trailer. So.
Is it? That's CG?
Yeah.
That's some bad CG.
Well, it's not the biggest budget in the world, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, PUBG has tons of money, man. They better put money into their games if they want them to be successful. Next up, Fortnite, as Matt mentioned earlier, hinted at, or actually, I think you said that off the air, didn't you, when we were talking about Fortnite? I can't remember if you said it on the show or before the show started. But Fortnite did not win an award that we thought it was going to win, but it did have a debut, and that's Master Chief. Again, something that was known for quite some time before the show happened. And literally, they cared so little about it, they released the 20-second trailer for it. That's it. They don't show Chief in the game. It's just, again, like a CG piece.
Well, then they jumped into the red versus blue tie-in, which they seemed more interested in.
Yep. But this goes back to what we were saying earlier, which is Fortnite has just turned into a big advertisement.
Yeah. Or it's kind of Smash Brothers a little bit, like for pop culture. It is the Funko Pop of video games at this point.
That's a good description. Yep, that's a good way to describe it. But anyway, Master Chief is in Fortnite. I think he's live already, isn't he?
I think so. I think it was like that night or something.
Yeah, I think that night he appeared in the game. Next up, another thing that we were talking about earlier when we were talking about Vin Diesel, which is we got to see the debut trailer for Ark 2. I don't know if people truly understand how big Ark Survival Evolved is. That game launched right around the launch of Sifted. I remember I played it as one of like the first games when we got into our office, and I was all in there with the TV. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. Sifted's happening. And this was one of the first games that I played. And when it came out, it was a disaster. It was so broken and so hard and like just way too difficult. It has turned into this gigantic thing that kids love. My nephews love this game. In fact, it's like their favorite game ever. And it has done very, very well. So here comes the sequel, Ark 2, with Vin Diesel in tow, which didn't seem to make any sense at first. But again, as the days wore on after the show, we start to find out that he's actually like the executive producer of the game.
Yep, he's an executive producer. He played the first game for like 1,000 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, Vin Diesel's a giant dork.
Oh, he's a huge gamer. Huge. Yeah. He's not a poser. Like he's
not
the real
all,
deal.
No.
Yeah. And
real video games, tabletop games, like the whole thing. I think I've told the story before, but like, we know Mr. Stark, who used to be his DM before he was famous.
Right.
Vin was in his Dungeons and Dragons game before Vin Diesel was a big deal.
Yep.
And when Vin Diesel got to do Chronicles of Riddick, he was offered his choice of co-stars. Like you can basically pick whatever woman you want to co-star with, you pick. And he picked Dame Judi Dench because he wanted to work with Judi Dench. And they're like, oh, we thought you were going to pick like some hot girl to be your like Riddick's girlfriend. He's like, no, I want to work with Judi Dench. So Judi Dench is in the movie. And apparently at some point during filming, they all got together at a couple nights, and he taught Judi Dench how to play Dungeons and Dragons.
No way.
If there is footage of that, I will give you a substantial amount of money to watch Vin Diesel teach Judi Dench how to play Dungeons and Dragons, because that sounds amazing.
It does.
Just trying to explain to Judi Dench what a half elf is. It's just like that is the content I need in my life. But that's the kind of guy you were talking about here. He's great.
Magister Cato, thank you for Twitch Prime. Justin Horman, thanks for Twitch Prime. Video Game Fury 79, thank you. Les David, thank you. Let's see, next. Microsoft Flight Simulator coming to Xbox Series consoles. I think this was inevitable. And I also think that it is inevitable that every PC game that Microsoft publishes will come, I think, from here on out, day and date on Series consoles.
Yeah. I think unless it's some kind of like really mouse-focused thing, like some kind of RTS maybe, but...
I think even then, I mean, if they put out...
I mean, the Age of Empires remasters are not coming to console.
I mean, mice work with the Series X.
Yeah, but they're not enough to make it worth doing that port, really. But I also think they won't make anything like that.
I mean, they can't be that difficult with the architecture.
I mean, you need a team, and you need to pay them money for months and months.
I mean, you got to do something. I mean, it doesn't take
for something that's not going to move the needle at all. Like no one's going to care if you do that. If you put,
I still stand behind my idea of turning Xbox Series X into a PC. I still think it just makes too much freaking sense.
I mean, you could. I bet someone will do that homebrew at some point and just get Windows on it, and just Windows on it. And now it's a little portable PC.
Yep,
it's probably pretty easy, really, if you can break the jailbreak it somehow.
Yep. But it looked just as good running on consoles as it did on PCs. That trailer looks just as good as it did in the lead up to the PC release. So. It's an acquired taste. I'll say that much. I think most people know what they're getting into with Microsoft Flight Simulator at this point. It is a very, very rigid and realistic simulation. Next up, to me, probably the game that impressed me the most at the show, and that is Crimson Desert. This game is coming from Korea, from Pearl Abyss. Remember that name. This studio is turning into like one of the better studios in the world, not just like in Korea. So we have second guessed this studio with every trailer it's ever released, Matt. We see it and we're like, that's not real. That's pre-rendered. That's CG. And it never is. And again, here, this is all running real time on real hardware. Probably... No, it is. It is the most impressive MMORPG I've ever seen as far as visuals are concerned. And they did Black Desert Online, which, in my opinion, what is the second most visually impressive MMORPG. So these guys got some skills. Like they are really, and then like just some of the animation that it's not even just like technically, artistically, they're doing some really cool stuff too. Now, I do not like MMOs. I will probably never play this. But if I did like MMOs, I would be hot on the trail of this game, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, it was even kind of hard to tell if it was an MMO.
Because the combat looks like Assassin's Creed. Sort
of, but also they don't show that. They don't show multiple players. They call it an open world action adventure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure what we're looking. I mean, it's definitely got my attention. Like I said that, like as soon as he started walking through that little gateway and it all kind of built itself in front of him, I'm like, okay, you got my attention on this one. Mm-hmm. And I think it's obvious that it's running in real time because if it wasn't, it would look better.
They finished the trailer with an awesome shot too. They show like this. You don't even know what it is at first. It's like all these geometric shapes kind of like flying through the sky. And you're like, oh, this is just the end of the trailer graphics where the logo comes up. And then the camera starts panning down and no, it's a wizard casting like this spell in real time. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, like the world is
coming from now.
Yeah, like the world is very impressive. The one concern I have is I found Black Desert effectively unplayable. Like,
oh, really?
I thought it was incredibly obtuse in terms of its interface, and I didn't really understand why I was wanted to do anything I wanted to do, and I just kind of drifted away from it after a couple of days.
Most people do praise it, though, for being one MMO where the combat feels like a typical action game.
Oh, sort of. I mean, it's just not quite there. It doesn't, in sort of like what we criticize Cyberpunk for, I don't feel like Black Desert Online's combat feels like anything. Like, it's something, like it's somewhere, it's halfway there, but it's sort of like that, there was a like an action MMO combat thing with like it looked kind of like Dead or Alive. The characters looked like they were from Dead or Alive, but very anime, like Vanquish or I think like Vanguard or it began with a V. I want to say. It was like that. Like they were trying to do that similar kind of thing, but like it just
Vanquish
wasn't.
was Mikami's.
Right, Vanquish was that. It began with a V. It definitely began with a V. But you made like anime style looking characters, and you were on a boat at first, and you got off, and like the combat was action based, and it was nice, but it wasn't quite there, you know. And I see that in this too. We'll see what it turns out. But it definitely has my eye is on this one for sure. Like
Pearl Abyss definitely technically proficient. To say the least.
I mean, there's a lot. I think there's a lot of developers lurking in South Korea that the world needs to hear about. That like, you know, there's a lot of talent in there that we just don't see much of.
We're starting to though,
and it's starting to break out of that, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see.
When you see games like this, it sure is, definitely.
Yeah.
Next up, my personal favorite thing from the show, and this is just me. I don't think it's the best game. Most people probably just let it wash over them and didn't even pay attention to it. Evil Dead, the game. It is a cooperative survival shooter set in the Evil Dead universe. But what's most important to me is that it's not like even though it does have the knight as a playable character, it's not really this like shticky, corny thing. It takes place at the cabin. It actually has playable characters from the first Evil Dead. Ash is one of the playable characters. I think it looks fun. I think it looks true to the IP, which is something that I have really grown sick of over time. Like I watched that, like everyone was like, oh, I know you love Evil Dead. Go watch the Showtime show. And I went and watched it. I thought it was terrible. Like I didn't even really like the last Evil Dead movie. I liked the reboot that just came out, like 6 years ago? Is that right?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
But I didn't like the third one, Army of Darkness, where he goes to like some other universe. And it was like it was basically a comedy. Yeah. I liked the first one a lot, even though now it's kind of corny with the effects. I like the second one the second most because it was starting to straddle the line between comedy and horror. And then the third one, like I can't even really watch it. So
the third one's the only one I like.
A lot of people feel that way. I know I'm in the minority. I'm a big gore hound, and that movie like rocked my world when I watched it when I was like 6. Like literally, like shook me to my core. Like I was not ready to watch that movie when I watched it for the first time. Me and one of my friends like went to this video rental store and they rented it to us when they weren't supposed to. And we went down in his basement and hid from his parents and watched it. And we were both like traumatized. So anyway, the first film in particular has made a big impact on my life. And so I still do like it. But obviously the practical effects now, as good as he was back then for the time, they're like a joke. But anyway, what I'm getting at is that the tone of this game is more in line with the tone that I like from the Evil Dead versus the tone that I don't like. So I'm pretty excited for this. I'm a little concerned that it may launch with just the cabin and like the characters that you saw. And it becomes this thing that like grows over time. And eventually they add more like Deadites and stuff like that. I don't know.
That seems like a pretty good bet.
Yep. And if that's the case, I'm not quite as excited for it because they did that with Friday the 13th. And I could never get into that. Like I went and played it when it first launched and I was like, oh, this has promise, but it's just kind of broken and janky. And I never went back to it. And if the Evil Dead's that way, I'll probably do the same thing. So as a big fan, I'm excited, but I have some trepidation. And then we're going to finish off with what I thought were the two most interesting indie games that were in the show. And the crazy part is they both are about road trips. First up is a game called Season. And this game is basically I think you're a person who's like on the spectrum and you're riding around kind of discovering the world for the first time in your life on your bicycle. And so, you know, it's an indie adventure game. I'm sure they're going to tug on the heartstrings at certain points in the game. Just an interesting concept, something I never heard of before, and also something that in all honesty, we expect from indies at this point. It's what I want from indies. I don't want indies to try to emulate AAA games on a budget. I want them to use the leeway that they have with their creativity to make interesting stuff. And to me, this is one of the more interesting indie games that was shown.
Although if indie games want to fill the niche of more AAA things that people refuse to make now,
that's a good point.
Which is how we've gotten so many Metroidvanias in the last few years. Like true. You can do that. Like that's okay.
Yep.
I don't need you trying to do God of War. Like,
we've seen that. It's spiders, and it's taken them like 13 years to make a passable game. So anyway, just want to keep an eye on, maybe go on Sifted and follow it if you want to get updates anytime something new is published on the site. And then the final one is called Open Roads, also a road trip game. This one is about a 20-ish looking girl and her mom who go on a road trip because the grandmother has died, the mom's mother, and there's all this mystery around her death. So you set out on the road with your mom to try to uncover the mystery behind your grandmother's passing. And again, an interesting concept. I like that, at least what we've seen so far, it's like an all-female lead cast. There's no dudes in it at all. Something that you probably wouldn't have seen even a couple years ago. Do you like road trip games, Matt? There aren't a lot of them.
Generally, I mean, the idea of them is good. I mean, I guess kind of going back to Full Throttle, I guess is sort of the original road trip or like adventure game.
Yeah.
This has some real talent behind it, both in terms of performance and development, I think. Kentucky Route Zero was another really good road trip. I mean, obviously that was a magical, realist, bizarre, fantasy-ish sort of thing, but like that was a road trip, obviously.
There's Road to Guangdong or something like that.
Yeah.
That's
like there's
like a little subgenre of it,
Life is Strange 2 is kind of pretty much a road trip.
Is,
I mean, it's a good premise for an adventure. Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Those games are road trip games,
trips,
really.
Yeah.
But yeah. So those are, you could even say, Tell Me Why is sort of a road trip. I mean, you're kind of a road trip back home, but like it's there.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good way to kind of tell an unfolding story that is sort of a personal journey. It's pretty standard literary trope. I mean, there's a reason.
It's also easy. You always have the quiet time in the car.
Right.
So you can get through the exposition in the car. Like the mechanics of it make it easy.
And you've kind of got the extremes that we've sort of become familiar with that you can draw from a sort of Kerouac's On the Road versus like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Like you kind of take what you need from each of those stories and figure out where you meet in the middle, and that's your story. That's kind of your tone. As sort of an American road trip story. Yep. And also road trip stories do tend to be like uniquely American things.
I like them in general. Like I like movies that are road trip movies. Like there's just something, there's an air about it. It's like you don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen because when you're traveling, you're not stuck in a setting. You're going places, so you never know where they're going to go.
And there's a lot of weird people out there.
Like Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation, road trip movie.
Want to see one of my favorite unsung road trip movies? Go find Interstate 60.
Okay.
Tales from the Road. It's written and directed by the guy who wrote Back to the Future.
Okay.
And he retired from filmmaking after he made it because it was the movie he always wanted to, the story he always wanted to tell, and the movie he always wanted to make, and he was done after that. I'm not saying it's that good, but it is interesting. And if you ever wanted to see the original Pink Ranger as like a weird, slutty hitchhiker.
Yes, I do.
There's your movie.
I'm kidding. So anyway, that's the Game Awards 2020, Matt. I will say this. One, after watching them and after prepping for the show and now after discussing them with you, I do feel like it was kind of missing that big kind of knockout punch.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
Mass Effect, obviously the biggest of them all, but
I feel like people didn't have anything really for him for that. Also, like, is this the first Game Awards with no big Nintendo reveal?
Oh, the other thing I should mention, well, Smash Brothers.
I wouldn't call a new character in Smash Bros. A big reveal. Really.
Yeah. The other thing I should say is there was a ton more in the show. Like this is literally the stuff that I felt was worth discussing. There was literally like dozens more exclusives on indie games and all these free-to-play things, and like it was a lot of work for him to corral all that stuff. And you're right. Like I think where we're at right now, we're in between generations. People aren't ready to show their next gen stuff really yet. Mm-hmm. I think he did do the best he could, but I do think it was kind of lacking that one.
And I think a lot of the hardware makers are sort of holding a lot of that back for themselves.
Yep. I totally get that. And just ultimately Jeff did a great job. I can't believe he even did it and pulled it off at all. It still ended up looking like a professional show. He got big celebrities. He still had great reveals. It was too long. He was forced to basically produce a boring show because he had no other choice. But I think he did the best he could under the circumstances. And once again, I want to give him kudos for another job well done.
Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. Certainly we couldn't have done any better. I don't think.
No, definitely not. Well, see his connections. It's all about his connect. His dad started IMAX, so he has all these connections in Hollywood that you and I could never.
Yeah, well, that was his. That was kind of his secret sauce back in the day, especially in the game trailers days. Was like he knew all the marketing people.
Yep,
that's the trick. Is usually
that is the trick because they have all the media.
Right, because usually we all, usually in the industry, in the game journalism world, you would go through PR. Yeah, he would go to marketing, and PR answers to marketing. So it doesn't matter what deal PR made with whatever gaming outlet. If marketing says no, we're going with this. We're going with game trailers. That's what they go with. Yeah. So he kind of threw the ball over the fence and then used that to go talk to the real neighbor to get the ball back. Basically, it was kind of a genius strategy that he could have done. It also took kind of balls to be sort of a hated person by some of the peer. Like they thought that was cheating, but there is no such thing as cheating in that scenario. Like there is succeeding and not succeeding, and
that's pretty much
the end. That's the end of the game, really.
Yeah. Yep. So excellent job, Jeff. As always, man. I can't wait to see what you do next year. Once I think you'll be able to do the show in person again. And I'm glad he was able to do it too, because if he had missed a year and lost
that would have been
money and weren't able to do it again, that would be really, really. We waited a long time to get an award show like this. So
I think continuity is important. Even if this year didn't do a lot to advance the prestige of the awards themselves. It's such a lost year for so many things that I don't think that needed to be or even should have been the priority this time.
Yeah.
But I think that he did establish the idea of having large scale celebrities present the awards. If he can continue that, if he can get some of those people to show up in person next year, I think that's a big gain for the show in general. In terms of just sort of optics, I think that's a good deal. And it also means they have those people on hand for parties or the red carpet or the pre-show stuff or whatever they're going to do in person next time. There's nothing here that cannot, you're right that it didn't quite work and you lost what you lost because of the pandemic situation, and there's nothing he could do to change that or control that. But I think he laid a lot of good groundwork for the next in-person one.
He also he did not use how to do award shows remotely.
Right. But what I'm saying is that he did not just sit back. He did not settle for, if we can just get it made, that's a victory.
Doing it is good enough.
He still was looking to next year in terms of how he was approaching what he did in this show, and some of the stuff he did in this show, even if it's just behind the scenes production stuff, is going to pay off for him next time when they do it again in person. And that is a testament to how smart he is as a show organizer. Yep. So even if you thought the show was boring, which I'm not going to argue with anyone about that, especially if you already knew all the reveals, that was certainly. I mean, look, when I was watching it live, I would look down at something else while the stage stuff was happening, and then when an award would be given away or a trailer would run, I'd look back up. Right. But there was a lot of thought going into moving forward and continuing this as a yearly tradition, and it would have been real easy, I think, to just sort of not worry about that and just worry about getting it done. And he did not do that, and I respect that a lot.
Okay. All right, let's move on. We're actually going to bring up a topic that we discussed on last week's show. We thought it was settled law, but as it turns out, it was not. So last week we mentioned that Codemasters was going to be purchased by Take-Two, and it seemed to be a done deal. To us, Take-Two had completely overbid for Codemasters. They had bid $900.
It did not occur to me that anyone else would want it, for that matter.
They had bid $975 million on Codemasters. And Codemasters, if you don't know, they publish the F1 games. They publish the Dirt Rally games. And that's pretty much it. They're solely a driving game developer. So we just figured Take-Two has some plan we don't know about, that why they're throwing all that money at them, but definitely they overpaid. Well, no, they didn't overpay, because along comes EA, who outbids Take-Two by $300 million to set the sale price at $1.2 billion for Codemasters. Man, maybe we should just start a freaking game development studio. I mean, look, Codemasters is good at what it does. It's probably, I wouldn't say it's the best driving game developer in the world, but it's probably second.
Up there.
It's one of the best. So I do understand there's value there. But as we mentioned last week, driving games just really don't sell that much anymore. And the only ones that do are kind of the first party games. So I was completely flummoxed by Take-Two buying it. Are you more or less confused by EA's bid, Matt?
I mean, so I am confused by it. Not in the sense that like I think that I think Codemasters should just disintegrate and go away or anything, but like the idea that people were so interested in owning this company that they basically got in a bidding war over it is a little bizarre to me, and I didn't understand any of it. And I asked some people I know over at, they're tangentially involved in EA, like what is the point? Like,
no, what are you doing?
It's like you already put out a mediocre racing game every year. Why is it?
Don't they already have like 3 studios that are doing?
They have several. They have Criterion and a couple bit. And like,
how many they need another one?
And I guess there was like an email about basically like sent out to everybody at the company that was basically like, oh, IP is very valuable, and we're going to bring together their franchises and our need. They sounds like they want to merge it with Need for Speed. They want Codemasters
Call of Duty with Need for Speed, where they have 3 studios working on it, so a new game comes out every year.
I think they want to try to revamp Need for Speed by injecting Codemasters into it. I think they want Codemasters' expertise with racing, and they're basically because I think, and the more I think about, I don't know if it's worth the amount of money they're paying here, but like the idea here seems to be we're going to take Need for Speed and bring it to Codemasters and say, like, please fix this. Like, make this into a great racing game that can't be ignored, I think is what their plan is here. Okay. Is that worth $1.2 billion?
I mean, it could be.
I don't know. It could be. I guess
if Speed goes back to the way it was, it's worth more than that.
Yeah, if you get Need for Speed or just racing games in general to kind of catch fire again, because there was a time when racing games were how you judged new hardware.
Yeah, I know.
Like there was, back in the N64 kind of. Oh, yeah. You remember that?
How much pop-up was there?
Yeah, like that was like, well, I don't know how to feel about this new hardware until I see a racing game. We're waiting for Cruising USA or like a Gran Turismo or.
Matt, I would argue this though. Even with Xbox Series X in that Halo Infinite debut, when they are driving the Warthog, you see the draw-in.
Yeah, the draw-in and the ground clutter.
In 2020.
It is a legitimately good benchmark in a lot of ways.
For sure.
To see something driving. I mean, that's problem in Cyberpunk, too.
Yeah, moving that fast is what it is. Yeah.
And
through the world.
And it's not a coincidence that you see Xbox launch with Forza a lot. Yeah, it's a good way to show off if you know what you're looking at.
Yep.
Remember when Dreamcast came out and Sega Rally was like the big deal. Like that was people never looked at a rally game of their lives. Were looking at Sega Rally on Dreamcast and being like, oh wow,
it was like mind blowing. Yeah, people bought that game just because of how it looked. Yeah, and it wasn't very good.
Just to justify it to themselves. That
it was pretty terrible, actually. Yeah. And then Metropolis Street Racing came out a little shortly thereafter, and that was like
I was on I was on Dreamcast, was great, and then Xbox bought them.
Yep,
and now they're Bizarre Creations, and then they were on Xbox
on Forza stuff. Yeah,
because that became it became Project Gotham Racing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I kind of get that. My thing with EA is like, almost anything that even slightly underperforms, they take that company or that developer or that franchise out behind the shed and shoot it in the head.
Yeah.
But Need for Speed crashes and burns over and over and over, and it just constantly gets another try. And I'm like,
that's
why?
Yeah.
What is it about Need for Speed that makes it like bulletproof to the execs over there? Whereas like, if Star Wars Squadrons sold even slightly under predictions, you would never see another X-Wing game again. Like, so it's just irritating to me that Need for Speed is somehow invulnerable. Like, where's Burnout? Yeah. How come I don't get any more? How come you won't even make a Burnout 3 remaster for me? Like, Need for Speed just like embarrassingly reinvents itself every 2 years, and we can't get any consistency out of anything else EA makes. It's really weird.
Glorious War just wrote in chat, F1 Ultimate Team. And then people were actually coming up with some pretty good reasons. Delfino109 says they're just trying to block Take-Two from having good racing games.
That could be too. I mean, if they can't have good racing games, no one gets good racing games.
But to be fair, Take-Two has studios that make racing games.
Oh, sure. But it's just weird to me. It's just weird to me that like that these big companies are having this fight over racing game. Like they're not.
It's nutty.
They're not that much of a factor. I wouldn't think.
It's not going to move the needle.
The other thing I can think is Codemasters are very good at tech. They've built engines specifically for their racing stuff. They have very impressive tech on display. And if I'm EA, I am definitely looking for a way to get out of the Frostbite dungeon I'm stuck in. And maybe they're going to
the crew too. Ubisoft, I'm sure, is out. They're like, you guys can have them. I mean, they're from Europe. If anybody should have bought them, it should have been Ubisoft. But they were like, no thanks. That tells you a lot. So. Yeah, I don't think it's a smart move, and I think it's insane that EA spent that much. I think it was insane that Take-Two was going to spend that much, but maybe there's a master plan that we just don't know about.
Yeah, if there's two companies that agree that company's worth that much, then they clearly know some stuff we don't know.
I mean, they could be developing a game behind the scenes that people had to sign NDAs to see that is like blowing people's doors off. Like we just don't know.
And I do still think that there might be some kind of tech reason for that. The guys at Codemasters have got to be some pretty tech savvy geniuses over there to some degree to get some of the stuff that they've made. Yeah. And if I'm EA, I feel like at this point I am definitely looking for an alternative to Frostbite 2. And maybe I'm done sort of expecting DICE to deliver on stuff like that. And maybe I want to show Frostbite 2 or whatever to Codemasters tech guys and be like, what can you do for us? And maybe they say we can fix a bunch of this stuff, or maybe they say we can build a bunch of tools that will make it more functional, or maybe they say, why don't we just build you something new? But one way or the other, I think EA, maybe that's part of the play here, is EA thinks that it could be useful from a company-wide tech perspective, which is possible. Like Codemasters does make some pretty solid tech. Yeah. So we'll see. Or maybe they really wanted that early 2000s B-list shovelware publishing schedule that Codemasters made us review
Codemasters used
in the
to do
early
a lot more than it does now. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, there's a lot of forgotten Eurojank PC games that EA is going to have rights to now that we'll never see again.
Yeah, they'll just be gone. It's like they never existed.
But I remember when we used to get Codemasters preview stuff all the time back at Tech TV, and every time it was just like, oh my god, what weird broken thing is this now? Like they're a very different company now.
Them and Infogram, so partners in crime. All right, let's move to the last topic of episode 241. I told you guys this was going to be a shorter one than usual. We're going to give you our last takes on Cyberpunk 2077. This game is the game that just keeps on giving, Matt, because just every day there's some new little thing that pops up where you're just like, wow. But in spite of all the stuff in the news and the horrible things that have been happening with the base PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game, I have continued to play it. And Matt, I have continued to play it and enjoy it a lot. Like, I really like it. In fact, the more I've played the game, the better it has become. Some of the missions that I have done of late have been right up there with some of the best stuff that CD Projekt Red has done. Some of the best DLC stuff that you saw in The Witcher. It gets there. Now, I will say this, Matt, also, since we last talked about this game, it has become a crash fest. Mm-hmm. When we talked last week, I had played a ton of this game and had like one crash. Literally, as soon as I started playing it again after GameFace last week, it was just constant. And and I'm playing on PS5. For me, what it seems to be is either I'm sprinting through like an area with a lot of detail and a lot of people, or I'm driving a car at a high rate of speed and it just wipes out and just kicks me like to the desktop. And it happened 3 times in 30 minutes for me at one point. And that's that I stopped playing. And then I waited a couple hours and I wanted to play it again. It's really freaking good. That's the problem with this game. It's so good. And it could be like literally what we thought it was going to be if it just wasn't a complete and utter technical disaster.
Yeah, I've only had 2 crashes on the Xbox version, but on PS
really only 2.
Yeah, on PS5, it was every crash I had was during movement.
Yep.
Either running somewhere or driving somewhere, and it's clearly some kind of thing where it's loading new stuff for the world, and it just drops. It just goes black, basically.
It could be how their RAM allocation, there's something going on there.
There's something there with the data stream that's tripping it up on PlayStation and PlayStation 5. I mean, that's the only thing I played it on there. Xbox, I've had 2 crashes, and both crashes, believe it or not, were because I was switching menus too fast.
Wow.
When you pick up a data thing, you know, like a thing to read, you know, and it pops the thing up, like hit left on the D-pad to read the thing. Both crashes I've had, I hit the D-pad to read the thing, and it was a thing I'd already read, so I instantly hit B to back out of it. And when I backed out of it, my character was stuck in the middle of an animation and couldn't move. And then slowly the whole game just freezes, and I can no longer go back to the menus or anything, and it just crashes out to the Xbox desktop. So that's happened twice in like 25 hours. I mean, it's not huge. But the biggest problem has been just general weird bugs, little glitches that make me have to restart the game. Like a couple times it stopped displaying my health and stamina. Like it just displays my health as 0, which
I've had all kinds of
that's an easy way to die if you don't know how much health you have.
Literally go on for hours.
A lot of weird stuff like that. There's getting vehicles stuck in nothing and not being able to get out of it.
Just getting stuck on like geometry and can't get off. I mean,
I haven't had any getting the character stuck on geometry problems really, except like the
usual
thing.
car is what I was talking about.
Oh, the car, yeah.
I got a car stuck in between like a pole and like a wall, and it was.
Well, the bikes will get just caught on nothing. Like they'll just
again. It goes back to what we were saying last week about how everything has a hitbox. Like after we talked about it, as I played it, I kept looking for and I just had those problems over and over again.
Yep.
But again, like I ended up having like hundreds of health. Like again, it never gets difficult, is what I would say. Mm-hmm. You still have more health than you could ever use, and it really takes some of the zap out of the big confrontations.
Especially now that I am like I ended up focusing on blades. And I
adjusted the difficulty. I have started playing it on the next difficulty setting because it was a joke. Like I would have to take a lot of health, but there was no way I was going to lose. And it just became like a means to an end. And even bumping it up, I haven't seen that much of a change.
No, there's not much different. I mean, look, once you get enough of the like, I'm focusing on blades. I move like 15% faster whenever I kill someone with a blade, and I get a stack of armor, and I get a stack of extra damage, and I get 7% of my health back when I kill someone with a blade. Like they can't kill me. Like they're not.
I'll say this: all the systems in this game, they work, and you can see it like instantly. Like,
and they definitely, there's been several tweets and articles about this, but like where the various reviewers and stuff have talked about, like, don't put stuff into everything. Like pick a path and focus on that attribute and focus on that perk tree, because otherwise you're never going to get to like the really cool abilities for whatever you're interested in. And that is, I went more jack of all trades on PS5, and I went much more focused on Xbox, and I'm having a lot more fun with my Xbox character because of that. So that is a very true thing, I would say, is like you don't want to max everything out or slowly build everything out all around as the character. You want to pick 1 or 2 things and focus on them and get to those high level abilities, because that's where it gets fun.
Well, I'll give you one guess how I spec'd my character.
I'm going to guess you are rifles and headshots.
Yes, I am. Yep. Yeah, that's how I play. And
now I have moved into that. My secondary is assault rifles, and I just picked up a legendary sniper rifle called Overwatch that
I have it too. Yeah.
Does something like 7,000 headshot damage. The katana I have right now crits for 6,000.
Oh yeah,
like
that's
no
good.
one can.
You had mentioned the katanas, Matt. Like
the katana.
And when I found one, I was like, okay, Matt said I should keep this, because I honestly don't use blades like hardly at all. Mm-hmm. So I usually just sell them or just get rid of them. I was like, I'm going to keep the katana because Matt said that they're really powerful. And I ended up running out of ammo and didn't even intentionally want to use the katana. I just hit triangle to switch weapons, and the katana came up. And oh my God, it just massacred. I was like filling these guys with a whole clip, and they're still coming at me. Like I hit the one guy once, it just chops his head off in a slice. And then the second guy, who I had never even shot at all, one slice and just down. And I was like, okay,
I am predicting that they said there's going to be
nerf them.
There's going to be 2 big patches. One of those patches is going to nerf katana. Katanas are
fun to play with too.
I mean, if you could deflect bullets with them, you would basically be a Jedi. Like, there's no. It's great. And I found legendary mantis blades. Like, so I got those for free, and so now I have these mantis blades, and you can just stab people. And the great thing is, like, when you do that, like, you're in the middle of the animation, you're basically invincible. So you just sort of have time. And I have The other thing I have I found it actually was it's a cyberware implant that slows time down by 60% for like 10 seconds when I'm spotted.
Oh, geez.
So basically, I run up to a guy, hit him with the katana, time slows down, and like 5 people are dead before anyone can even react to me. Like,
wow.
It's
but this
really
is my
good.
point, Matt. Like, this is the stuff, though, that we wanted from this game. And
right.
the more I've played it, the more I've got to get into it, and the more awesome it is. Like, it's all there.
Yeah, I'm still in the good, not great category for it, and I do think like the main story stuff is really solid. Like they're really, you can tell the pedigree is there from the Witcher 3 stuff, where you really get into why the characters are doing what they're doing, and like the scenarios and the setups are interesting, and how they go wrong is interesting. How they're scripted to go wrong is interesting. Like the way they build the stakes on all the story missions are really good, and sort of how that all develops is you can see it, like it's there, especially once you get to Act 2. Because it's tempting to sort of mess around in Act 1 forever, but you really aren't supposed to, because like, and I think the evidence for that is
try to keep you from doing it, really.
Yeah, I think the evidence, because you're trapped in Watson the whole time. But I think the other evidence for that is like once you finish Act 1, you get the title screen, right? You get the Cyberpunk title. So that's a prologue, really.
Yeah.
And so once you get to Act 2, it all opens up, and there's a lot more fun stuff to do, and
it becomes so much better.
And there's some like really cool references in there that you find some like legendary equipment and weapons that and there's a reason to explore. Like there's, the problem for me is just, it's so rough.
It is.
It's just
a killer.
A mess.
It's a freaking killer. Like this game should have come out next holiday season.
Yeah.
But,
it's
Matt,
like,
can you believe they thought they were going to release this game like
April?
A year ago?
Yeah.
No, like initially, like a year ago.
I don't even know what that would have looked like.
There's no way. Like, do you think this was all just a ploy to keep generating pre-orders? Like I think we're done talking about the game. Let's talk about CD Projekt Red for a minute, because what CD Projekt Red has done is really, really scummy. There is no way they had no idea that the PS4 and base Xbox One versions of this game weren't busted. There's no way. They were we're going to send it out broken, because they know that not everybody is going to ask for a refund. They know it. So they're like, our alternative is to not release the PS4 and Xbox One versions at all, which means we lose all the sales. So they're like, we'll put it out, we'll abuse our fans and the audience, and sure, people are going to be pissed. And when they are pissed, then we'll try to look like the good guys by saying we're taking refunds. And ultimately, not everyone is going to ask for a refund. So we're still going to make a bunch of money off of these other versions.
And even if you do, what are they going to do? Like they have the thing in that letter they put out. It's like, oh, if you need help with refunds, email. It's like, but they didn't talk
doing anything.
But they didn't talk to any of their but they did. They said, contact this email.
PlayStation Network and contact Xbox.
They said if you need help with refunds for like physical purchases, email us here. Like that was a thing in there. But like people have done that, and like Patrick Klepek's looking into it. But people have done that, and like the retail partners don't know anything about it. Like they're like, we don't know what that means. Like if you want to turn a physical copy of this game, most retailers are not going to take open software. And like if you email them about like how they're going to help with it, like no one really knows what that means. It's a weird. I mean, certainly, this used to be one of my favorite companies in the industry, and my estimation of them has dropped considerably in the last several years.
I don't think you're alone.
Multiple reasons.
I think a lot of people are right there with you, man.
Like if you're not already upset with them for the transphobia and the poor reactions to things like that over the last few years, especially in their social media, you have to not be happy about this. Like
Matt,
the treatment of the customers.
This is inexcusable, man. There's no excuse for it. They
hid the console version of this.
Yeah, there's no excuse for it. It's one of the worst things I've seen a publisher or developer do, and I've been working in this industry for over 20 years. So,
and I'm sure it will eventually be great. They'll fix it up by March. I bet it'll be the game it should have been. But then it should have come out in March.
Yep. I mean, I'll be honest, like I am still enjoying it playing on PS5. It crashes every once in a while, but the PS5 is so damn fast. It's like it's back up. And
you're back into it pretty fast.
Like 20 seconds. So,
and it does save pretty much. I've never lost more than like half a minute, really.
Right. And once it crashed, like the auto saves are great. Like I'm more than generous. But also once it crashed the first time, now I know. Like if I hit a milestone, I manual save. So it does take a little while to kind of figure out how to play it to not hate it. But I've really loved it. I'll be honest with you. Since we last recorded the show, I've really enjoyed it. So we'll get into some of that stuff more in the Game of the Year episode. But overall, I mean, I guess just really the message is if you bought the PS4 or the Xbox One version, you have 14 days to return it. I would return it. Unless you're cool with holding on until you get a next gen console. And then that code is just as good as buying the next gen version.
Although I would still argue that while the next gen versions obviously work better or run better, it's still not good. The HDR is broken. As I said,
there's so much stuff broken in this game. And I'm not even convinced in 6 months it's going to be all fixed. So
the HDR should be a fix like that. Like that's just literally they didn't know what they were doing, and they did the same. They broke the Witcher 3's HDR on the Xbox One the same way when they updated it at one point a couple years ago, which is bizarre to me that they still don't understand. If you look at some of the videos on it, basically it doesn't output when you up the brightness on the HDR settings, it just raises the whole profile. It doesn't keep everything at true blacks.
Yep.
It doesn't stretch it the way you're supposed to with HDR. It just basically takes SDR and makes it brighter, so you lose all the black levels. It's really sloppy.
It's washed out. Yeah, well, you had mentioned it, and then as it turns out, you were right. It was legitimately
like I did not have the scopes.
You just looked at it and were like, I think this is a problem, and you were absolutely right.
Yeah, I didn't have the scopes and stuff to prove it, but like YouTube videos had gone up like by the next day that we're showing like this is look at the scope on this monitor. It does not look right. But you can once you see enough good HDR, you know when you see bad HDR, and this was that. And it's not like that on the PC. The PC looks great.
Yep.
So
PC's great, and honestly, I've had playing on PS5. It's annoying, but it hasn't been bad enough that it stopped me. So take that for what it's worth.
I am probably going to stop.
You are? You're going to wait?
I'm going to wait because it's just too annoying to me.
You may get really bored over the holiday season and change your mind.
I mean, I could go back in and do a bunch of the open world side stuff and not, miss too much. Like there's plenty to do that doesn't advance the main story.
Yeah, there's crap going on everywhere.
But the main story so far, I do really like. I will say again, I don't find this to be a cyberpunk story. I think it is a noir story set in a cyberpunk setting, which is a different thing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's.
I don't really care. I like the story. I like the characters.
I like the characters.
I care about the characters in the game, like really care about them. And when stuff happens to them, I'm affected by it. And that's how they're written, how they're voiced, all of it.
I like the characters. I just think it's a shame they missed the opportunity to actually do a good cyberpunk story. Instead, they kind of did. This is the story, and this is something that you would find in what was called new wave science fiction, which predated.
Matt, I think we went through this last week, and I think at the end of it all, I said I think it's something that you care about a lot more than everybody else does.
I don't agree with that because there are people who care a lot about what cyberpunk is. And if you're buying a game called Cyberpunk, I think you're going to expect it to be
you, but Matt, I think you're talking about 0.5% of the people that will buy this game.
I don't agree with that, but also there's no such thing as criticism that shouldn't make you care because this is a more interesting way and less surface level way to approach the material, and this is a very surface level approach to this material that they're taking, and I think that's disappointing.
Okay. It's time for Q&A, but I think you guys are confused and you're like, are they going to do Q&A? Because the stream isn't ending. We do want to do a little Q&A here at the end of 241. It's not going to be as long as usual because we need to wrap this show and do our Game of the Year awards. But we'll take a couple from you guys. Here's one from Vincent. Surprise Returnal didn't make the TGA shortlist given your love for Housemarque. Thoughts on the gameplay and thoughts on that being Sony's only contribution. And you're right, I did kind of overlook that. And that's a good point. I should have included it. Don't take it as a slight, anyone. It was also kind of the only PS5 thing that showed up, which makes it a huge oversight on my part. How did you think it looked, Matt?
Looks cool. I mean, I could see the Housemarque pedigree there.
Finally.
Looks cool.
I didn't see it at first in the first trailer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested. It's hard to really draw a lot of conclusions from that. It still reminds me of that other game where you play the woman who has to fight her own clones.
Yeah,
whose name I can never remember. Yeah, I mean, you got my attention. It's funny. There's a little cadre of sort of like space-oriented next-gen games I can't ever remember the difference between them, but I'm interested in all of them this. But I've kind of hit this point with the upcoming first wave of next-gen titles where I'm just like, I'm just not going to worry about it. Like they'll get here when they get here. Like in the meantime, we'll I don't know. I'll just play Spider-Man again or something. But it looked cool. It looked cool, and it looks like Housemarque is not completely abandoning their established aesthetic, even if they're making a very different thing than they've made before. So I was happy to see that.
Yep. I thought it looked okay. I forgot it. So that tells you a lot.
Yeah, I did too. So yeah,
there you go.
I was trying
Matt
to think
saw
of
the
anything.
rundown and didn't think of it either.
Yeah, I was trying to think even when we were in the middle of the show, like, is there anything he didn't bring up that I would bring up? I was like,
I think the game is struggling to leave an impression, is what I would say. Ultimate Villain, thank you for Twitch Prime, man. You got in here at the end. Let's see. Or Eth Demon. I understand the business reasons why, but do you think CD Projekt Red should have canceled the PS4 and Xbox One versions? No. I don't think cancel. I think delay a lot. Yeah. I mean, that's too big of an addressable market for them to ignore. So they had to eventually put it out for those. But look, if they wanted to release the game for PS5 and Xbox Series X and PC and then delay the other versions, I think that would have been smarter, but boy, would they have got so much heat.
Yeah, and I also don't. This was never going to run right on the vanilla PS4.
Never.
And Xbox One
I don't know
S.
if it ever
there's
will.
Just no way. No, it won't. It's not. You're gonna. There's too many compromises you're gonna have to make, which is funny for a game that was announced before those systems were released.
Existed.
But
I know.
Yeah, you're probably gonna be able to get the One X and the Pro up to a certain standard, and that's about where it's gonna rest. I don't think it was an option to release the next gen versions first because clearly they don't have those done yet. Probably is a factor of when they got the final hardware for both of them. I think you probably should have delayed it to at least the point when the next gen versions were ready.
Yeah.
So at least alongside the disappointing console versions, you could at least point to the next gen stuff and say, well, at least that works.
Yep.
But instead you have legacy code running on the next gen systems and not even running very well in a lot of cases. They've already had to do the quick patches to fix. The PS5 version actually, it introduced more crashes like in the brief amount of time I played it too. But it does look sharper. Like
it
they
looks
did,
better.
they did improve it a bit.
X right now, but that won't last. I don't think once they get HDR and everything going.
No, but the muddiness that made the text hard to read for me when I loaded it was gone when I loaded up after the patch. So at least they did that. They did fix the epilepsy problem on the brain.
Yeah, they had done that before the show last week, actually.
Not on the Xbox.
Oh,
that patch had not gone up on the Xbox yet.
Gotcha.
So which does it's just a slow glow now, which is probably not going to do anything to anybody. So I guess I think they said there's another patch coming like next week.
There's going to be a patch coming.
There's a big one.
End.
Well, then there's a big one in January and another big one in February, and then they'll see where they are.
They're still going to be short. I can tell you that right now.
I mean, The Witcher 3 never quite solidified in some ways. So
I mean, it's still kind of busted in some ways. So I don't know if this game will ever get there. But last question for this episode. Then we got to go to our Game of the Year awards. This one comes from Zed Saber Juno. The Game Awards being 3 hours felt excessive. We agree, obviously, based on our discussion. Is it possible for Jeff to get rid of the fluff and make it only 2 hours? I don't think he can, because what you have to realize is everything is paid for. I mean, some of those reveals, like even maybe some of the big ones, there might be some financial considerations in place there. Mm-hmm. I know at first, definitely they got to run that stuff for free. But now that the Game Awards are on their feet and he has that size of an audience, he might be charging publishers to run their stuff in the show. And I don't know that for a fact. I'm just saying that's typically how these businesses kind of evolve over time.
There's definitely sponsorship deals in place for that.
Yeah.
Which is why he doesn't need to advertise Schick razors anymore.
Right. And so the runtime, he probably needs it to turn a profit because time is money in advertising. So I don't think it'll probably ever be shorter than 2 hours. I think maybe someday he'll get it to 2.5 if the show starts doing really well because it is bloated. And I think even if you could get him to talk openly about it, he would probably agree that the show's bloated. But I think it has to be right now. So
also, that's just award shows.
They are that long. And I think they all could probably be shorter. So I think that's probably the deal. But anyway,
imagine how much longer it'll be if he ever starts giving the awards out one by one
instead of just listing them off in big blocks. Yep. So anyway, that's GameFace episode 241. Definitely the last live streamed episode of GameFace for 2020. There is a chance we do one more pre-taped one But stuff's going to have to happen for that to happen, because right now it is dead, and it probably will be until the end of the year. Now, I realize a lot of you guys may not watch our Game of the Year award, so I want to thank all of you guys for all the support you have given GameFace or Pactor Factor or our Patreon or any of the other crazy things that we've done this year. I want to thank, as I said at the beginning of the show, I want to thank Matt. I want to thank Jared. But I also want to thank, most importantly, Vincent. Vincent has been grinding behind the scenes this whole year. I don't even know if you guys realized like how he has transformed this year. I mean, he has gone from basically someone who is just helping with curation to someone who is producing really good content for us. And so, Vincent, kudos, brother. You have had an amazing, transformative year, and it's been incredible to watch. I also want to thank Mitch. It's hard to even remember at this point that Mitch was here at the beginning of the year trying to help us. And then obviously coronavirus hit. He needed to get a job. He does have a job, by the way, and he's doing really good. He has his own place now, and he is kind of assimilated into LA, which is good. But, you know, he showed up at the beginning of the year to try to help as much as he could. And I want to thank him for that as well. Thanks to the people who have been donating cash to us at sifted.net/donate over the last few days. That is up and working. We're having some issues with it before, but we just got someone to fix it, and we ran some tests. It's good now. Thanks to people who subscribe with Twitch Prime. I could just go on and on. There's so many people to thank from this year. Just really from the bottom of my heart, thanks to all of you. I hate to use this phrase, but it really, for us, it really does take a village to keep this going. It takes everyone. It takes the people on YouTube subscribing with Twitch Prime. If those people didn't do that, we wouldn't survive. That's just the honest to God's truth. So it takes everyone. And I appreciate everyone in equal measure. Our big patrons who are really giving huge chunks of cash to us every month. Thank you. I can't even put it into words how much I appreciate it. So much love to all you guys. I really hope everyone has as good a holiday season as possible, no matter what you celebrate. And I hope that somehow, some way, you're able to safely spend time with the people that you really care about. And so on behalf of Matt, who you can find on Twitter at @mkyle, and on behalf of Jared, I'm Shane Satterfield, who you can find at Dinfire on Twitter. And we'll see you guys, hopefully, well, we'll see. It may be next year, it may not. But for now, GameFace is up and out.